The supply room door clicked shut behind Emma Brooks, and hospital director Victor Sterling smiled like a man who had never been denied anything in his life. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead as he stepped closer, his expensive suit spotless, his confidence effortless. Emma stood beside a shelf stacked with medical supplies, her hands still carrying the faint scent of antiseptic. 27 years old, new nurse, no connections, no power, the perfect target. "You have potential," Victor said smoothly. "I could move you to the ICU, better schedule, better pay, better future." His hand reached toward her shoulder. Emma didn't move, her heartbeat remained steady. She had faced danger before, real danger. This was simply a different kind of predator wearing a different uniform. Then the hospital intercom suddenly crackled. Somewhere down the corridor, a commotion erupted, shouts, running footsteps. Victor frowned and turned toward the door. What happened next would change everything. Because at that exact moment, a federal K-9 unit was entering Silver Oak Medical Center, and the dog leading the operation had not forgotten the woman who once saved his life on a battlefield thousands of miles away. Minutes later, the most powerful man in the hospital would find himself backed against a wall. Federal agents would flood the hallway. Secrets buried for years would begin rising to the surface. And the young nurse he thought he could destroy was about to become the one person capable of bringing his entire empire crashing down. A cold autumn rain drifted across Ashton Ridge, Texas, turning the city lights into blurred reflections beneath a sky of dark steel. Emma Brooks stood outside Silver Oak Medical Center and stared up at the towering glass building that seemed to disappear into the gray morning clouds. At 27 years old, Emma was neither the most confident nurse nor the most experienced. She stood 5 feet 6 inches tall with a slender frame that years of military-style discipline had kept fit despite long shifts and sleepless nights. Her chestnut brown hair was pulled tightly into a practical bun, revealing a heart-shaped face, soft hazel eyes, and pale skin that rarely saw enough sunlight because of her work schedule. Most people who met Emma for the first time described her as quiet. Some assumed she lacked confidence. Others mistook her silence for weakness. They were usually wrong. Emma had learned long ago that silence could be armor. 3 years earlier, Emma's father had died from complications following a workplace accident. The medical bills had consumed nearly everything the family owned. Her mother, Linda Brooks, a 52-year-old elementary school teacher with tired blue eyes and prematurely silver hair, worked 2 jobs to keep their small house outside Dallas. Emma had spent years balancing nursing school, part-time work, and caring for her family. Every promotion mattered. Every paycheck mattered. That was why Silver Oak Medical Center mattered. The hospital was famous throughout Texas. Politicians received treatment there. Corporate executives flew in from across the country. Wealthy donors filled the hospital foundation with millions of dollars every year. For Emma, landing a position there felt like winning a battle she had fought for nearly a decade. She adjusted her badge and stepped through the main entrance. The lobby looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. Marble floors reflected the overhead chandeliers. Fresh flowers decorated every corner. Soft classical music floated through hidden speakers. Emma suddenly felt underdressed despite wearing brand-new scrubs. First day, the voice belonged to a woman standing behind the nursing station. Karen Mitchell was 43 years old, medium height, with curly blonde hair cut just above her shoulders and warm brown eyes that seemed incapable of cruelty. Years of emergency room experience had etched faint lines around her eyes, but they only made her look wiser. Karen had the reputation of being one of the few genuinely kind supervisors in the hospital. Emma nodded. Karen smiled. "You look terrified." Emma laughed nervously. "Is it that obvious? Only because I looked exactly the same on my first day." The simple kindness eased some of Emma's anxiety. Karen spent the next hour introducing Emma to different departments and explaining procedures. As they walked through the polished hallways, Emma quickly realized Silver Oak had its own social hierarchy. Doctors occupied the top, administrators occupied the level beneath, nurses occupied everything below, and new nurses occupied the bottom, especially night shift nurses. By evening, Emma found herself assigned to the 4th floor recovery wing. Most nurses hated the overnight schedule. Emma loved it. Night shifts meant fewer politics, fewer meetings, fewer opportunities for mistakes, most importantly, fewer opportunities to attract attention. Unfortunately, fate had different plans. At precisely Chinzamabe p.m., Emma met Victor Sterling. The hospital director entered the recovery wing, accompanied by 2 administrators. Victor Sterling was 54 years old and looked more like a United States senator than a hospital executive. He stood over 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and a lean athletic build maintained through expensive trainers and private fitness clubs. His dark hair was streaked with silver around the temples. His clean-shaven jawline looked carved from stone. His pale gray eyes remained calm even when everyone around him was nervous. Staff straightened when he appeared. Conversations stopped. People moved faster. Emma noticed all of it. Victor noticed Emma. Their eyes met briefly, just a second. Yet something about the way he studied her made Emma uncomfortable. Not because he smiled, because he didn't. His gaze lingered slightly too long, evaluating, measuring, calculating. Karen leaned closer. "That's Victor Sterling." Emma nodded. "I figured." Karen's smile disappeared. Word of advice, stay invisible around him. Emma glanced sideways. "What does that mean?" Karen hesitated. The pause itself was an answer. "Just focus on your work." That was all Karen would say. The rest of the shift passed quietly. At midnight, Emma checked patient charts. At 2 in the morning, she adjusted medication schedules. At 4, she helped an elderly patient who couldn't sleep. The routine felt comfortable, predictable, safe, until nearly sunrise. Emma was exiting a patient room when she heard someone call her name. "Nurse Brooks." She turned. Victor Sterling stood alone at the far end of the hallway, without his administrative entourage, without witnesses, without distractions. "Sir," Victor approached with smooth confidence. "I've been reviewing personnel files." Emma felt immediate caution. Why would a hospital director review the file of a brand new night nurse? "Yes, sir?" "You graduated near the top of your class." Emma blinked. "That's correct. And military medical training?" "A short reserve program during nursing school." Victor nodded slowly. "Impressive." Emma forced a polite smile. "Thank you." Victor stepped closer. Not enough to cross professional boundaries. Just enough to create discomfort. "Silver Oak rewards talent." Emma remained silent. "I believe people like you deserve opportunities." Something tightened inside her chest. The conversation sounded normal, yet every instinct told her something wasn't right. Victor continued. "Most nurses spend years waiting for advancement." His gray eyes never left hers, but some people move faster. Emma recognized the implication. Not clearly, not directly, but enough. She chose her words carefully. "I'm happy where I am, sir." A brief silence followed. Victor smiled. This time the smile felt rehearsed. "Ambition isn't a bad thing, Nurse Brooks." "No, sir. Think about your future." Then he walked away. Emma watched him disappear around the corner. Only when he was gone did she realize her palms were damp. She couldn't explain why. Nothing inappropriate had happened. Nothing she could report. Nothing she could prove. Yet something felt wrong. Very wrong. Hours later, as dawn painted Ashton Ridge in shades of gold and gray, Emma left the hospital exhausted. She told herself she was imagining things. She told herself Victor Sterling was simply being friendly. She told herself she was overthinking. But deep down, another voice whispered a different warning. Some predators didn't show their teeth immediately. Some smiled first, and somewhere inside Silver Oak Medical Center, Victor Sterling was already making plans. Emma broke. 3 weeks later, a dry northern wind swept across Ashton Ridge, while dark storm clouds gathered over the distant refinery district beyond the city limits. Emma Brooks had mastered the art of becoming invisible. She arrived before most nurses, completed every assignment without complaint, and left without lingering in break rooms or joining hospital gossip. Unfortunately, invisibility was no longer working. Victor Sterling had not forgotten her. Emma noticed it first in the schedule changes. She suddenly received the most difficult patient assignments. Double documentation reviews appeared on her charts. Minor mistakes that other nurses made without consequence somehow became formal warnings when her name was attached. She never complained, but she noticed. One evening, while reviewing medication records at the 4th floor nurses' station, Karen Mitchell approached carrying a tablet. The usually confident supervisor looked troubled. "Emma, can we talk privately?" Emma immediately sensed something was wrong. Karen led her into a small conference room. The older nurse closed the door and folded her arms. "You need to answer honestly," Emma nodded. "What happened between you and Victor Sterling?" Emma's stomach tightened. Nothing happened. Karen studied her carefully. That's not what I asked. The silence stretched. Finally, Emma sighed. He approached me several times. Karen's face darkened. What kind of approach? Career opportunities, promotions, special attention. Karen looked away. The reaction confirmed Emma's growing fears. You've seen this before, haven't you? Emma asked quietly. Karen didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice carried years of frustration. Silver Oak has a way of making certain problems disappear. That answer told Emma everything. Before she could ask more questions, Karen's phone vibrated. She checked the screen. The color drained from her face. Emma, what? Karen looked genuinely upset. Human Resources wants to see you immediately. The meeting took place on the administrative floor. Emma had never been there before. The carpeted hallways felt completely different from the clinical environment downstairs. Expensive artwork decorated the walls. Everything smelled like money. Waiting inside the office was Natalie Cross. Natalie was 38 years old, tall and thin, with sharp cheekbones, perfectly styled black hair, and flawless makeup that never seemed to move. Her gray business suit looked expensive enough to pay several months of Emma's rent. Natalie spoke politely, but there was no warmth in her blue eyes. Years in corporate administration had transformed her into someone who viewed problems as paperwork, and Emma had become paperwork. Natalie folded her hands. Nurse Brooks, we've discovered discrepancies involving controlled substances. Emma blinked. What? 2 fentanyl vials are unaccounted for. The words felt surreal. There must be a mistake. Natalie slid a document across the desk. Your access credentials were used. Emma looked down. The report seemed official, professional, convincing, and completely false. I didn't take anything, Natalie nodded mechanically. That's what everyone says. Anger flashed inside Emma. Check the cameras. We will. Check the medication logs. We have. Then you'll find nothing. Natalie's expression never changed. The investigation is ongoing. 2 security officers entered the room. Emma felt her heart sink, not because she was afraid, because she finally understood. Victor Sterling wasn't trying to pressure her anymore. He was removing her. 48 hours later, Silver Oak placed Emma on administrative suspension. A week after that, she was terminated. Officially, legally, cleanly. No evidence proved she stole anything. But no evidence cleared her either. That was enough. The system had done exactly what it was designed to do. Emma returned to her small apartment feeling numb. The apartment sat on the 3rd floor of an aging brick building near downtown Ashton Ridge. The furniture was second-hand. The refrigerator rattled whenever it ran. The air conditioner barely functioned. Still, it was home. She called her mother that night. Linda Brooks listened quietly as Emma explained everything. When Emma finally finished, neither woman spoke for several seconds. You know you didn't do it, Linda said softly. That doesn't matter. It matters to me. Emma fought back tears. For the first time since losing her job, she allowed herself to cry. Not because of the hospital, not because of Victor, because she had worked so hard to build a future, and someone had destroyed it in less than a month. The following week became a blur of job applications, rejection emails, silence, financial calculations, fear. Then disaster struck Ashton Ridge. At Haizo Muy Bon AM on a Thursday morning, an explosion rocked the Gulf Star chemical refinery 7 miles outside the city. The blast shattered windows across multiple neighborhoods. A toxic chemical leak followed. Dozens of workers were injured. Hundreds required medical evaluation. The emergency response system became overwhelmed within minutes. Emma learned about the disaster from television. She sat frozen on her couch as helicopters circled above the refinery. Smoke towers climbed into the night sky. Ambulances flooded the highways. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Instead, she answered, Emma Brooks? The voice belonged to a man. Professional, urgent. Yes. This is Michael Torres with Ashton Ridge Emergency Management. Michael Torres sounded exhausted. He was a 45-year-old disaster coordinator known throughout the county for handling hurricanes and industrial accidents. Years of crisis management had given him a calm voice even during catastrophe. We need medical personnel immediately. Emma frowned. I don't work at Silver Oak anymore. I know. Then why are you calling? Because people are running out of time. The line went silent. Then Michael added quietly, Right now, I don't care about hospital politics. Emma looked toward the television. A reporter stood outside Silver Oak Medical Center. Ambulances lined the entrance. Stretchers filled every available space. Patients sat on sidewalks. Doctors were sprinting between emergency tents. The hospital looked overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed. Michael spoke again. "Can you help?" Emma closed her eyes. Victor Sterling's face immediately appeared in her mind. The false accusations, the humiliation, the termination papers, the ruined future. Every reason to say no. Then she looked at the patients on the television screen. None of them had framed her. None of them had harmed her. They were simply scared, in pain, and desperately needed help. Emma slowly stood. "I'm 20 minutes away," relief flooded Michael's voice. Thank God. She ended the call, grabbed her old nursing shoes, pulled on her scrubs, and headed for the door. Outside, emergency sirens echoed across Ashton Ridge. The city was changing. Emma didn't know it yet, but before the sun rose, Silver Oak Medical Center would become the center of a crisis unlike anything it had ever faced. Emergency sirens echoed across Ashton Ridge as a reddish haze lingered over the eastern horizon, where the Gulf Star Chemical Refinery continued to burn. Emma Brooks arrived at Silver Oak Medical Center 23 minutes after receiving Michael Torres's call. The scene outside looked less like a hospital and more like a battlefield. Ambulances crowded every entrance. Police cruisers blocked traffic. Temporary triage tents had been erected in the parking lot. Nurses pushed stretchers through rain-soaked pavement, while physicians shouted orders over the constant noise of helicopter rotors overhead. For a brief moment, Emma simply stood there. 3 weeks earlier, she had walked through these same doors as an employee. Now she was returning as someone the hospital had thrown away. The bitterness remained. But the patients mattered more. Inside the emergency department, chaos ruled everything. Dozens of victims suffering from chemical inhalation-filled hallways, waiting rooms, and even administrative offices converted into treatment areas. Some struggled to breathe, others suffered burns. Many were terrified. A young resident physician rushed toward Emma. "You the nurse from emergency management?" "Yes." "Good. Trauma Bay 3. We need hands." Emma immediately moved. Training took over. The fear disappeared. The self-doubt disappeared. Only the patients remained. For nearly 2 hours, she worked without stopping, starting IV lines, administering oxygen, monitoring respiratory distress, calming frightened families. The exhaustion that had haunted her since losing her job vanished beneath pure adrenaline. Then everything changed. The automatic doors at the emergency entrance burst open. Several people looked up. Federal agents entered the hospital. Not local police, not state investigators, FBI. The agents moved with purpose. Black jackets, tactical gear, communication headsets, and leading them was a dog. The animal immediately attracted attention. The Belgian Malinois looked approximately 6 years old and weighed nearly 80 pounds of pure muscle. His tan coat gleamed beneath the fluorescent lights. Black markings covered his face like a tactical mask. A faded scar crossed the left side of his muzzle. His amber eyes constantly scanned the environment, missing nothing. Years of military and federal service had sharpened every instinct he possessed. The name stitched onto his harness read, Ranger. Walking beside him was Special Agent Daniel Mercer. Daniel Mercer was 46 years old, tall and powerfully built, with broad shoulders shaped by years in military service before joining the FBI. His dark beard was trimmed short and flecked with gray. Deep lines framed his eyes, evidence of countless difficult assignments. Daniel carried himself with the calm confidence of a man who rarely raised his voice because he never needed to. The emergency department became strangely quiet. FBI agents rarely appeared without a reason. Daniel approached the front desk. "We're looking for Victor Sterling." The charge nurse frowned. "Why?" "I'll discuss that with Mr. Sterling directly." Word spread through the department like wildfire. Victor Sterling arrived minutes later. The hospital director still looked composed, still looked powerful, still looked untouchable. But Emma noticed something unusual. The moment Victor entered the hallway, Ranger froze. Every muscle in the dog tightened. His ears moved forward. His eyes locked onto Victor. A low growl emerged from deep within his chest. Not loud, not aggressive. Warning, pure warning. Victor stopped walking. The smile on his face disappeared. Daniel looked down at the dog. "Easy, Ranger." But Ranger refused to look away. The dog continued staring directly at Victor Sterling. Emma felt a strange sensation. Something familiar. Something buried deep in memory. Then Ranger suddenly turned. His head snapped toward Trauma Bay 3, toward Emma. For 1 second, the world seemed to stop. The Belgian Malinois stared directly at her. His ears rose, his tail moved, then the impossible happened. Ranger broke formation. The highly trained federal K-9 sprinted down the hallway. Several agents shouted. Daniel's eyes widened. Ranger! The dog ignored every command. Patients moved aside. Doctors jumped out of the way. The Malinois raced straight toward Emma. Everyone expected disaster. Instead, Ranger skidded to a stop directly in front of her. The dog stared upward, his tail wagged furiously. A soft whine escaped his throat. Emma's heart nearly stopped. She knew that face. She knew those eyes. No way! The memory returned instantly. Afghanistan. 6 years earlier, dust, explosions, gunfire, a military medical outpost outside Kandahar. Ranger had been younger then, barely trained. His handler's convoy had struck an improvised explosive device. Emma had been serving as a combat medic during a reserve deployment. She remembered crawling through smoke, remembered wounded soldiers, remembered finding the injured military dog trapped beneath twisted metal. Most people would have focused only on the human casualties. Emma hadn't. She spent nearly 40 minutes stabilizing the wounded dog after treating the soldiers. She remembered the blood, the damaged leg, the terrified eyes, and now those same eyes were staring at her. Recognition. Absolute recognition. Ranger stepped forward, pressed his head gently against her chest. The emergency department fell silent. Daniel Mercer slowly approached. You know him? Emma looked stunned. I think I saved his life. The FBI agent blinked. What? Kandahar province, 6 years ago. Daniel stared at Ranger, then at Emma, then back at Ranger. The dog answered by refusing to leave her side. A smile appeared on Daniel's face. I've worked with him 4 years. He shook his head. I've never seen him do that. Meanwhile, Victor Sterling looked increasingly uncomfortable. The hospital director tried to walk away. Ranger immediately reacted. The dog's friendly demeanor vanished. He spun toward Victor, another low growl. The hallway became quiet again. Victor froze. Daniel noticed. Every experienced handler notices changes in behavior, especially from a dog like Ranger. What is it, partner? Ranger continued staring. Daniel's expression changed. Not suspicion. Interest. Professional interest. He turned toward Mr. Sterling. I think we need to talk. Victor forced a laugh. About what? Daniel's eyes hardened. A few complaints that recently landed on my desk. Emma noticed genuine concern flash across Victor's face for the first time. Just for a second. But it was there. The powerful director recovered quickly, yet something had changed. The balance of power was shifting. For years, Victor Sterling had controlled every room he entered. Today, someone had entered the room who didn't care about his title, and strangely enough, that someone walked on 4 legs. As FBI agents escorted Victor toward a private conference room, Daniel paused beside Emma. We'll probably need to talk later. Emma frowned. About Ranger? Daniel smiled slightly. About Ranger. Then his expression became serious. And maybe about Victor Sterling, too. For the first time since losing her job, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Because somewhere inside Silver Oak Medical Center, long-buried secrets were beginning to surface. And Ranger had just pointed 3 days after the refinery disaster, a cold rain fell over Ashton Ridge, washing soot from the streets but doing nothing to remove the tension hanging over Silver Oak Medical Center. Emma Brooks sat in a small conference room on the hospital's administrative floor, staring at a thick stack of personnel files spread across the table. Ranger lay quietly beside her chair. The Belgian Malinois seemed relaxed, but Emma had learned years ago that Ranger never truly relaxed. His ears constantly twitched toward distant sounds, and his amber eyes periodically swept the room. 6 years of military and federal service had transformed him into a living security system. Across the table sat Daniel Mercer. The FBI agent looked more exhausted than usual. Dark circles had formed beneath his eyes after several sleepless nights, yet his focus remained razor-sharp. We've reviewed the complaint files, Daniel said. And? Emma asked. Daniel slid a folder toward her. What you're about to see is why we need your help. Emma opened it. The first complaint involved inappropriate behavior by a senior administrator. The second involved retaliation against a nurse. The third involved suspicious termination records. Then came a fourth, a fifth, a sixth. By the time she reached the 20th file, Emma's stomach felt sick. Every case followed the same pattern. Complaint, internal investigation, employee resignation, disappearance. No accountability, no consequences. Silver Oak had buried everything. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Officially, you're a special civilian consultant assisting the FBI. Emma looked up. Me? You understand the hospital. You know the staff. And unlike most people here, you're willing to speak. Emma wasn't sure whether to feel honored or terrified. 3 weeks earlier, she had been unemployed. Now she was helping a federal investigation. Life had become strange. Very strange. That afternoon, Emma officially returned to Silver Oak. Not as a nurse, not as an employee, as an FBI consultant. The reactions varied. Some staff members looked relieved, others looked nervous. A few seemed genuinely frightened. Emma noticed every expression, especially Victor Sterling's. The hospital director remained outwardly calm. His expensive suits remained perfectly pressed. His smile remained practiced. Yet Emma noticed tiny cracks forming beneath the surface. He no longer walked through hallways with complete confidence. He watched Ranger whenever the dog appeared, and Ranger watched him right back. The following day brought an unexpected breakthrough. Emma was reviewing archived personnel records when a message arrived on her temporary FBI phone. Unknown number. Meet me tonight, 8 p.m., Old River Cafe. Come alone, no signature. Daniel immediately objected. Could be a trap. It could also be a witness. Daniel frowned. I don't like it. Emma didn't either, but she went. The Old River Cafe sat on the edge of Ashton Ridge overlooking the Brazos River. The building was old, with faded brick walls and wooden floors that creaked beneath every step. Emma arrived 10 minutes early. Ranger remained in Daniel's vehicle nearby. The FBI preferred not to advertise his presence. At exactly 8 o'clock, a woman entered. She appeared around 35 years old, tall, thin, nervous. Her blonde hair was tied into a loose ponytail. Dark circles beneath green eyes suggested years of poor sleep. Her pale skin carried the tired look of someone who had spent too long carrying secrets. The woman stopped beside Emma's table. Emma Brooks? Emma nodded. The woman sat down. My name is Melissa Grant. Emma immediately recognized the name. Former Silver Oak nurse. Resigned 4 years earlier. Melissa stared at her untouched coffee. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Finally, Melissa exhaled slowly. I almost didn't come. Emma understood. Fear had a way of becoming permanent. What changed your mind? Melissa looked directly at her. You came back. The answer surprised Emma. Melissa continued. Most people leave Silver Oak and never look back. What happened to you? The woman's jaw tightened. Pain flashed briefly across her face. Victor Sterling happened. The words came quietly, but the anger behind them was unmistakable. Melissa explained everything. The unwanted attention, the promises, the pressure, the retaliation after she refused, the threats disguised as professional advice, the investigations that suddenly appeared, the promotions that disappeared, the career opportunities that vanished overnight. Emma listened without interruption, because every detail sounded familiar, far too familiar. Then Melissa reached into her purse and removed a small black flash drive, no larger than a thumb. Yet somehow it seemed heavier than anything Emma had ever seen. I've been keeping this for 4 years. Emma stared at it. What's on it? Melissa laughed bitterly. The reason I never sleep well. The former nurse pushed the drive across the table. Emails. Emma's pulse quickened. Between who? Victor Sterling, hospital attorneys, board members. Emma felt her heart racing. Melissa continued. Financial records, internal investigations, settlement agreements. The silence grew heavy. Then Melissa added one final sentence. The people protecting Victor are much bigger than Victor. A chill traveled down Emma's spine. She suddenly understood. This wasn't one corrupt administrator. This was a network, a system, a machine, and she had just been handed evidence against all of it. Daniel nearly dropped the flash drive when Emma showed him later. If this is real, it is. The FBI spent the next 48 hours verifying files. The results shocked everyone. Secret settlements, destroyed complaints, offshore payments, witness intimidation. Multiple individuals suddenly became federal targets. The investigation exploded overnight, and someone noticed. 3 nights later, Emma left the temporary FBI office just after midnight. The streets were mostly empty. Rain dripped from streetlights. She walked toward her car, then stopped. A dark SUV sat across the street. Engine running, lights off. The vehicle hadn't been there 5 minutes earlier. Emma continued walking. The SUV remained. A knot formed in her stomach. Military instincts returned immediately. She checked reflections in nearby windows. The SUV moved, slowly, following. Not close enough to prove anything. Close enough to send a message. Emma reached her vehicle. The SUV stopped, waiting, watching. Her pulse quickened. Inside the shadows behind the windshield, she could barely make out a silhouette. Someone was sitting there. Someone who wanted her to know she was being watched. Emma quickly entered her car, locked the doors, started the engine. The SUV pulled away before she could identify a license plate. When she arrived at the FBI office 20 minutes later, Daniel listened carefully to her description. His expression darkened. Then Ranger suddenly lifted his head. The dog moved toward the window, hackles rising. A low growl escaped his throat. The same growl Emma had heard when Victor Sterling first entered the hospital hallway. Daniel exchanged a glance with her. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Someone had become nervous. And nervous people often made dangerous decisions. For the first time since receiving Melissa Grant's evidence, Emma realized the investigation was no longer just uncovering secrets. It was threatening powerful people, and a warm spring breeze drifted through Washington, D.C., carrying the scent of blooming cherry trees beneath a sky brighter than anything Emma Brooks could remember from the darkest days of her life. 8 months earlier, she had been sitting alone in a small apartment, unemployed, terrified, and wondering whether anyone would ever believe her now. She stood on the steps of the United States Capitol. Life had a strange way of changing. The journey from Silver Oak Medical Center to this moment had been long, exhausting, and dangerous. The investigations had consumed nearly 7 months. 7 months of interviews. 7 months of evidence collection. 7 months of fear. And 7 months of watching powerful people slowly realize they were no longer untouchable. The breakthrough came when FBI forensic accountants finished analyzing the financial records Melissa Grant had preserved. What investigators initially believed was a single hospital scandal quickly expanded into something much larger. Settlement payments had been hidden through shell companies. Employee complaints had been erased from official records. Witnesses had been pressured into silence. Entire careers had been destroyed to protect a handful of executives. Victor Sterling had not acted alone. The corruption reached deep into Silver Oak's leadership structure. One cold November morning, federal agents moved simultaneously across Texas. Search warrants were executed, offices were sealed, computers were seized, bank accounts were frozen. And for the first time in nearly a decade, people began talking openly. Victor Sterling was arrested shortly after sunrise. Television cameras captured the moment. The once powerful hospital director walked down the steps of his luxury home wearing handcuffs. His expensive suit remained perfectly tailored. His expression remained controlled. But his empire was gone. Emma watched the footage from FBI headquarters. She expected satisfaction. Instead, she felt sadness. Not for Victor. For everyone he had hurt. Because no arrest could restore the years stolen from those victims. Over the following weeks, additional arrests followed. Hospital attorney Gregory Shaw was charged with evidence tampering and obstruction of justice. Gregory was a 58-year-old corporate lawyer with silver hair, sharp features, and a reputation for protecting wealthy clients. For years he had hidden behind legal technicalities, convincing himself he served the law while helping corrupt people escape consequences. Several administrators resigned before charges could be filed. Others chose cooperation agreements. One by one, the walls collapsed, then something unexpected happened. The victims started appearing. At first there were only a few, a former nurse, a technician, a department assistant, then dozens, then hundreds. Many had remained silent for years. Some carried emotional scars far deeper than anyone realized. Emma attended several testimony sessions. Each story sounded different, yet all carried the same theme: fear, isolation, powerlessness. One witness especially stayed in her memory. Rebecca Collins was 41 years old, with curly dark hair and tired eyes that reflected years of anxiety. She had once been one of Silver Oak's most respected surgical nurses before retaliation destroyed her career. When Rebecca finally testified, her hands trembled throughout the interview. But she never stopped speaking. At the end, she looked directly at Emma. "If you hadn't spoken first," Rebecca said quietly, "none of us would be here." Emma struggled to answer, because the truth was simple. She almost hadn't spoken. The thought haunted her. How many people stayed silent because they believed nobody would listen? That question eventually became the foundation for her next mission. 3 months after Victor Sterling's conviction, Emma officially launched the Brooks Healthcare Advocacy Foundation. The organization occupied a modest office building in downtown Ashton Ridge. The goal was simple: provide legal guidance, emotional support, and professional resources to healthcare workers facing abuse, retaliation, harassment, or corruption. Emma never intended to become a public figure, yet requests for interviews arrived almost daily. News networks called, medical associations reached out, universities requested speaking engagements. People wanted hope. People wanted proof that standing up could still matter. Through all of it, Ranger remained beside her. The Belgian Malinois had become unexpectedly famous. Photos of the former military and FBI K-9 appeared across national news outlets. Journalists loved the story. The loyal dog who recognized the medic that had saved his life years earlier. Children mailed letters addressed simply to Ranger. Veterans sent patches and medals. Animal rescue groups named fundraising campaigns after him. Ranger, of course, remained completely unaware of his celebrity status. He cared only about two things: protecting Emma and finding snacks whenever possible. Daniel Mercer often joked that Ranger possessed the heart of a warrior and the appetite of a vacuum cleaner. The joke wasn't entirely inaccurate. Then came the invitation. Congress wanted testimony. The Senate Committee on Healthcare Accountability had begun drafting federal whistleblower protection legislation. They wanted witnesses. They wanted experts. Most importantly, they wanted survivors. Emma initially hesitated. Public speaking terrified her, always had. Daniel eventually convinced her, "You're not doing it for yourself." The words stayed with her, and so she agreed. The hearing room felt enormous. Television cameras lined the walls. Senators filled the elevated seats. Reporters crowded every available space. Emma adjusted the microphone. For a moment, she remembered the frightened young nurse who had walked into Silver Oak Medical Center for the first time. The difference between that woman and the person sitting here seemed impossible to measure. She began speaking. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with truth. She explained how institutional power protected predators, how fear silenced victims, how systems often punish the people trying to do the right thing. Several senators listened in complete. Others took notes continuously. The testimony lasted nearly 5 hours. When it ended, the room erupted into applause, something rarely seen in congressional hearings. Later that evening, Emma stepped outside the Capitol. The sun was setting behind the city skyline. Golden light reflected from the marble buildings. Ranger sat beside her, older now, a little slower, a few gray hairs appearing around his muzzle, yet his eyes remained exactly the same. Loyal, steady, fearless, Emma knelt beside him. For several seconds, she simply rested a hand on his shoulder. Neither needed words. Together they had survived things neither could have imagined. The frightened nurse and the wounded military dog had somehow helped change an entire system. As the evening sky darkened above Washington, Emma realized something important. Justice had never been about defeating Victor Sterling. Justice was about giving people their voices back. And because those voices were finally being heard, countless others would never have to suffer in silence. Sometimes God's greatest miracles do not arrive with thunder from heaven or signs written across the sky. Sometimes they arrive through ordinary people who refuse to stay silent when the truth matters most. Emma Brooks never set out to change a system. She simply chose to do what was right when it would have been easier to walk away. God used her courage, her compassion, and even her pain to bring hidden darkness into the light. What powerful people tried to bury was eventually exposed, because God's truth has a way of finding its path no matter how deeply it is hidden. In our daily lives, most of us will never face corrupt executives, federal investigations, or national headlines. But we all face moments when we must choose between fear and courage, silence and truth, comfort and integrity. Every act of kindness matters. Every honest decision matters. Every time we stand up for what is right, even when no one is watching, we become part of something greater than ourselves. This story reminds us that God can use ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. He sees every struggle, every tear, every sacrifice, and every act of faith. Even when it feels like no one notices, God does. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs encouragement today. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories of faith, hope, courage, and the incredible ways God works through everyday lives. May God bless you and your family. May He fill your home with peace, your heart with strength, and your future with hope. May his protection surround you, his wisdom guide you, and his love never